Ladies and gentlemen, I extend my greetings to each one of you today. Thank you for gracing our webinar centered around the latest updates within the BRSR core assurance and value chain disclosures, meticulously based on SEBI's circular of July 12, 2023, which brings significant amendments to the SEBI LODR regulations 2015. I am Ipsita Roy and your host for today, and I'm truly honored to guide you through the wealth of insights that await us throughout the webinar. As we embark on today's session, I assure you that our discussions are poised to be nothing short of enlightening. With the expertise of our esteemed speakers, Mr. Abhishek Garg and Ms. Swati Chaurasia, we are also privileged to have our partners from GovEva, Mr. Jangu Dalal and Mr. Aditya Chitri, gracing us with their presence. Together, we shall glean insights into the dynamic realm of BRSR and unlock the latest dimensions within it. I urge you to embrace this opportunity to its fullest extent. As we delve into the webinar today, I want to ensure that everyone will be getting the toolkit. This will involve new BRSR format in Annexure 1, BRSR core format in Annexure 2, CB circular dated July 12, 2023, IPCC conversion factors and GHG protocol guidebook, PPP factors, FAQs that were released by SEBI. This presentation supported by our very own checklist. Do remember that your queries are of utmost importance to us. Hence, please share them with us using the query form, and we will diligently address them post the webinar. We will also be compiling these queries and present it to SEBI to attain their valuable insights. Now, let's dive into the agenda for today's discussion. Following new BRSR format, BRSR core framework for assurance, ESG disclosure for value chain, and a sneak peek to GovEva Power Platform. After the presentation, we will also have a Q&A session where you can ask your questions, whatever they are. I request your kind attention to the meeting rules. The meeting will be recorded. The meeting shall be based on Chatham rules. That is, only the discussions would be recorded without attributing to the speakers. Q&A session shall be taken in the last. Kindly restrict the discussion to the mentioned topic. Note that all attendees are on mute. For any queries, please use the raise hand feature. The moderator shall unmute and allow to speak in the Q&A round. Kindly introduce yourself and your organization briefly and ask your question. In view of the time limitations, we would request all to avoid repetitive questions. You may also please keep entering your queries in the chat box and we shall get back to you. Following the itinerary of the webinar, I now welcome Mr. Jangu Dalal, co-founder and CEO of GovEva, who has played a pivotal role in shaping its journey towards sustainability. With a solid foundation at Wipro, he later made fundamental contributions during the nascent telecom era with Cisco Systems. At the helm of Cisco's operations in Singapore, he led the Asia-Pacific region. He further served as the managing director of several listed companies, including Cisco, D-Link, and Avaya. Now I invite Mr. Jangu Dalal. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ipsita, for the lovely introduction. And I must compliment Abhishek and his team for putting this webinar together. It's extremely topical, and I welcome everybody for this, what I think would be an extremely fruitful 1-hour session with us. We've been in the space of, let me share my screen before I move forward. So, yeah, hi folks, can you all see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So I was mentioning to you that we at GovEva have been in the ESG business for about 5 years now, and over the last 1 or 2 years, we've been seeing a lot of action around the BRSR. And I must say that we have dealt at GovEva with multiple reporting frameworks and jurisdictions across the world. But I'm extremely proud as an Indian that what our SEBI has done with the BRSR is probably very path-breaking. It's a fantastic disclosure. A lot of the companies that we have dealt with and spoken to have found it a little onerous as well. But in terms of leading the globe, in terms of how corporates and enterprises should report their sustainability initiatives, as you can see from this slide over here, it has taken inspiration from the best of the available frameworks, whether it's the CDP or the TCFD or the European GRI or the SASB from US. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the integrated reporting concept as well. It has taken the best from all, but at the same time, retained its own unique identity. Uh, and, you know, as we speak, a lot of people are completing their BRSRs, they are uploading their XBRLs to their respective stock exchanges and BSE and NSE. And my sense is by the time we reach around October time frame, we'll have about all the 1,000 companies in India disclosing their ESG data, reports, analytics to the public. Now, all of us who are having any interest in the BRSR, this is going to be a pivotal moment in the sense that what public limited companies do when they disclose their financials every quarter and then on an annual basis, it's available to the world at large. Lots of analysis and disclosures can be worked upon. Same is going to happen with the non-financial parameters, which are the ESG parameters. Now, a lot of us might think that BRSR has just started over the last 2 years. But actually, if you see its genesis, it started way back almost 12 years back in 2011 when we had the NVGs coming out. And slowly but steadily, if you see, there has been a deliberate design in the way which we have moved to the BRSR as we know it today. And as we know it today, when we completed March 23, is going to be very different in March 24. And I think that's the topic which our friends at A2G will explain more in detail to you. Now, just coming to the fact that whilst it's a wonderful disclosure document, very comprehensive, some of you might have done it, would have realized that there are almost like 180 different data/information points required. And there are multiple disclosure types. Whilst it is extremely rigid in its format, there are places where you can write free-flowing text, whatever you want to write, cut, paste, type it, whatever. Then there are precise tables which require you to give minutest details. And for large complex organizations, one cell in one table might require multiple stakeholder and inputs and calculations. And then there are all these new things which a lot of our Indian companies have come across, which is around energy consumed, waste, intensity, water, turnover rates, your emissions. A lot of our clients have had real difficulty figuring out what is their scope 1, 2, and 3 and how they can work around that. And finally, across all the 9 principles, it asks you all kinds of policies as well. Now, if you sum it up, you know, whilst it's a great step forward for people who are doing it within the organization, there are some you need something like 180 different quantitative and qualitative inputs. Associated with India's largest FMCG corporation. To get them to complete their BRSR, they had to poll and get information from something like 29 odd factories, 130 odd different locations. Now, all of that has to be collated, calculated, and put together. And then, as I mentioned, your complex calculations around GHG emissions, your waste. The BRS specifically asks you for 9 different types of waste. I had an interesting conversation with an MD of a company which told me that, you know, this BRSR is great because Till now, I only thought there are two types of waste, which is wet waste and dry waste. But now with the BRSR, I realized that there are 9 different types of waste, and there are 6 to 7 different types of disposal methods, which my company has to now report on. So it's extremely complex, makes it very difficult to do things manually. And to end it all, whilst other European and other formats allow you to write the report in the way you like with some amount of guidelines, our BRSR is extremely prescriptive, which to my mind is very good, because then, as you know, it allows you to upload the XBRL format, and which leads to the ultimate aim which SEBI has in mind, which is that the data which is there can be easily consumed and analyzed, and interested in a company. So just to tell you that, that we do is reporting, and BRSR is something which we have done for 50 odd clients this year. What we have enabled our clients to achieve is a high degree of productivity, accuracy, and I would say auditability. The company which I was mentioning, the FMCG company, in the previous financial year, that is year ending March 22, they had done the BRSR voluntarily. And I understand from them that it took them something like 3 months and a lot of back and forth. This year, using the digital approach with all the good things that we have, including deep usage of artificial intelligence, which leads to great productivity, this company cut down their BRSR creation cycle from across 30 factories, 130 locations, from 3 months to something like 3 weeks. And that requires deep domain understanding and digitalization of the platform. Now, as we progress into the next version of the BRSR, which requires you to do the core, and then in 24, 25, the larger companies will also have to get their supply chain. It's going to get more and more onerous, more and more complex, and I don't think there is any other way to do this accurately and productively other than with a digital approach. So with that, I would like to thank everybody for joining us, and I'm sure we'll get more chances to interact and talk about our joint offering of A2G and GovEva. With that, now back to you, Smita.
Thank you, Mr. Dalal, for your kind words and showing us the pathway forward. Now, I would like to request Mr. Abhishek Garg to enrich all of us with the latest insights of BRSR.
Sure. So thank you, Ipshita, for the context setting, and thank you, Jangu sir, for taking us through the brief about the whole BRSR regime and the history. And thanks a lot for all of you, which I welcome today, this afternoon, for sharing your time to discuss and to know more about this interesting and the new SEBI regulation amendment. So, without wasting further time, let us directly delve uh, into the highlights into this particular amendment which has happened recently. So the BRSR reporting is a regulation, it's a mandate through LODR regulation, which is SEBI regulation 2015, which we call it listing obligation and disclosure requirements regulation, which has been amended on through a gazette notification of 14th June 2023. And subsequent to that, SEBI came out with a circular on 12th July, which released the with which they released the BRSR core format, the BRSR new format, and as well as they have released the details about how the ESG value chain disclosures in the BRSR core format. So let me take you through what are these three things which has come, and we'll go in little detail with little illustrations for us to understand what it means, how it's going to impact, and how we can navigate through this particular amendment and implement this. So firstly, let me start with the new format of the BRSR. The new format of the BRSR is termed as Annexure 2 with this particular SEBI circular. This Annexure 2 or new BRSR format is applicable for disclosure for top 1000 listed 1000 companies, entities for FY 23-24 onwards. This new format has been incorporates new KPIs, which is taken from the attributes of BRSR core, which is nine key ASG attributes. Also, the newer format in the intensity ratios disclosure in the new format is based on revenue adjusted for purchasing power parity to enable global comparability of the emissions reported across the globe. Now, what is BRSR core format, which is termed as Annexure 1 under the circular? So the name is BRSR core framework for assurance. So what is BRSR core? So BRSR core is nothing. It is a subset of the whole BRSR report. So in the BRSR report, there are three sections. There are nine principles and multiple things. In BRSR core, there are specified nine ESG attributes, which is a subset of the total BRSR. In this BRSR report also, there is a data and assurance approach provided for those specific nine ESG attributes for which 150 companies, the top 150 companies needs to take a reasonable assurance for FY 23-24. So all the companies have to do the reporting. 1,000 companies do need to do reporting as per the new format, and then the subset format, the limited scope of nine ESG attributes need a assurance to be done for top 150 companies for FY 23-24. And who can do the assurance and who can be the assurance provider? There's a FAQ has been released by SEBI along recently, which we will be taking you through. Now we have understood that BRSR core is a subset which gives a limited scope for reasonable assurance for 150 companies, and there are the nine key ESG attributes. Now, what is ESG value chain disclosures? So, in the value chain disclosure, the SEBI in the circular and amendment has said that the value chain partner disclosures need to be done on the BRSR core format only. So it's not like that for my value chain partners I need to report for the full BRSR format. No, I need to do that reporting for my value chain partners only on that subset BRSR, which is BRSR core, nine ESG attributes. And when I say value chain, it encompasses both sides, not only supply chain, it also encompasses the sales side, the demand side, supply and demand, if we look into this manner. And on top of that, they have said that the value chain, the top 75% of your supply chain, which is upstream, I would say supply chain, downstream, I would say demand side, the top 75% contribution of value chain partners needs to be reported for on the BRSR core. And who are supposed to do this reporting? The entities, the top 250 listed entities in the SEBI are required to disclose the BRSR core for value chain partners for the top 75% of their value chain partners. And this is applicable from FY 24-25 onwards. And believe me, it's not limited to only 250 companies. They have given a flow of increase in numbers, which it will be made mandated to multiple companies. Moving ahead, now as keep on saying the nine key ESG attributes, the subset of BRSR. These are the nine key ESG attributes which has been made as a subset of BRSR core, and these nine ESG attributes majorly encompasses the environment related factors, which is GHG footprint, water footprint, energy footprint. So I was talking about the waste, which is embracing circularity and waste management, employee well-being, gender diversity, inclusive development, customer and supplier engagements, and openness of business. S- in summary, 1,000 companies, the impact to them is they need to report as per the new format for 23-24, and top 150 for 23-24, they need to ensure that they take reasonable assurance only for the BRSR core, the nine ESG attributes. And as I was saying that the applicability of BRSR core assurance will be made mandated as we go ahead to majority all the companies. So for FY 24-25, 250 companies need to ensure that they need to get BRSR core assurance. For 25-26, 500, and 26-27 onwards, it will be all 1,000 companies which will be implicated. Moving ahead. Now, this is a snapshot of the format of BRSR core. In summary, they have given the attribute. with that attribute, they have also given the parameter of reporting, how what reporting you need to do in that particular attribute, what will be the measurement factor, and very importantly, what is the data and assurance approach. And they have also given a link of this particular attribute with the overall the BRSR format. So for example, the greenhouse gases is related to principle 6 of section C of BRSR format and question number 7 of essential indicators. We have a session wherein Swati will be taking you through the new report BRSR format and where has been changes. But this is the, in summary, sample snapshot of the BRSR core format, wherein all the similar details has been provided for 9 ESG attribute. Also, they have given certain directions in terms of in case data is not available, what could be the approach for data and assurance. Please move ahead. So again, coming back to the same thing, these are the details which you would be able to go through the files which the team will be sharing. But what I will be doing here, that out of this 9, I will be picking up one. Just go back to the earlier slide, Ishita. I'll be picking up the GHG footprint scope 1 emission as an illustration to take you through what is the data assurance and approach has been mentioned, and what could be asked or what you should be ready with for your data assurance, which we need to start working on from this year to report next year. Please move it to the next. Yeah. So let's take an illustration of the explanation for the GHG footprint. So under the GHG footprint reporting, there is scope 1 and there is scope 2. They have clarified through multiple protocols and require multiple protocol and policy documents, framework document, what is scope 1 and scope 2 covers. But generally, emission from combustion in owned or controlled boilers through fossil fuel usage by a company which is directly controllable by the company falls under the scope 1. So imagine a company has done a reporting in this in the format in the left side bottom, wherein they have reported that scope 1 emission is 3,56,780 metric ton odd number. Now this is the reporting a company has done. Now for this reporting, on the right side there are 6 steps of data assurance approach which has been provided. For example, they will say the data need to be assured for absolute fossil fuel consumption, the emission factor which has been taken, whether it is from IPCC or it is from actual testing from the accredited lab, and whether we have those certificates from that lab, quantity of carbon capture, GHG emission in CO2 equivalent by process, which is process emissions, which is non-fuel source, and the fugitive emissions. And then finally, the calculation of all these numbers once these numbers are vetted and verified by the auditor or assurance provider. Please go ahead. Now, as I said, scope 1 emission is a combination of consumption of fossil fuel multiplied by the emission factor plus process emissions plus fugitive emissions, and if there is any carbon capture, reducing that carbon capture. So let's focus on the first part of the data assurance approach, which is the consumption of fossil fuel and emission factor. So once a company has reported a number for 20 for a particular FY, they need to further provide the details ki, okay, you have given 1 lakh tons of metric tons of carbon you have reported as your emission. Please give me the detail of your type of fuel you have consumed, how much you have consumed, what is the emission factor you have taken, and how have you calculated, and all those details would be asked. Once that detail has been asked, then there will be a verification of consumption of those materials. So for example, the cooking coal, they have taken consumption of 3,448 metric ton, for example. Then what is that number right? How will you verify that number? So there could be accounting approach which can be used, which is consumption approach, and then could be different approach like physical verification of closing stocks, verification of purchase register, and sample verification of purchases. If there are certain energy meter which keeps the recording and report the utilization and consumption of energy, and then there will be system audit, and all those audit will be required. And all these approaches which I'm showing you as a brief are linked with all the guidelines provided and through the the various frameworks issued by ICI, internet international bodies, and also through the data assurance approach provided under the QRSR core format. So basically, once you check the consumption through checking the numbers of purchases or consumption or through energy meters, then we will be checking whether the company has, whether the entity has, applied the right emission factors. Have they taken the emission factors from the approved IPCC updated list? Have they taken it from the accredited lab based on testing? So those things will be checked and verified for calculating your absolute fuel consumption and the emission factors. Please move ahead. Then for the carbon capture, this is purely with reference to the GHG protocol, which has been mentioned with the GHG protocol guidelines, wherein the verification of authority of the authorization, verification of sources, and all those will be detailed checked basis the protocol provided in the same. For GHG emission, for process emission, and for the fugitive emission, the input output analysis, the standard material consumption approach, normal loss and abnormal loss, and the sample verification, all these particular processes verification approach could be taken. And again, I'm saying this is just a little bit brief of auditing. There could be multiple details as you go in detail out for a particular scenario may change. Go ahead. With respect to the assurance provider, SEBI has also released an FAQ recently, wherein they have clarified who can be your assurance provider. So the question they have clarified: does the assurance provider need to be a chartered accountant? They have said not necessarily, but has the assurance provider need to have necessary expertise for undertaking reasonable assurance. They have also talked about what activities or service by an assurance provider can lead to conflict of interest. They have also spoken about what activities can be undertaken by assurance provider for the BRSR course. So they have clarified which are the situation and how you should be choosing assurance provider. What are the limitations of assurance provider? He cannot be involved into the activity if he is providing a reasonable assurance. He cannot be involved in any other activity which may lead to conflict of interest and influencing his opinion on reasonable assurance. So they have clarified that the auditor need to be independent, auditor need not be involved in conflict of interest and all those things. Further, they have said, can the internal go back? Further, they have asked, can the internal auditor of a listed entity or its group entity be appointed as assurance provided for BRSR core? They have clarified, no, the internal auditor of a listed entity or a group entity cannot be appointed as the assurance provided for the BRSR core. So that's clear. That has been clarified by the SEBI. Go ahead. Can the statutory auditor of a listed company be appointed? Again, they have said yes. For the internal auditor, they have said no. For the internal statutory, for the statutory auditor, they have said yes. The statutory can be appointed as assurance provider for the BRSR core. And there are multiple FAQs which we will be sharing. As I said, which assurance standard could be referred for assurance provider? They have clarified that the standards on assurance engagement ISAE 3000 and SSSAE 3000, which was released by ICI of India, which could be very well referred for providing the assurance. Please move ahead. Moving on to the second topic, which is the ESG disclosures for value chain partners. There are four important things we need to understand for ESG value chain disclosures. As I said, this disclosures is for limited disclosure on the 9 ESG attributes, which is BRSR core for the value chain partners. And this is applicable for top 250 companies for FY 24-25 basis market capitalization. Again, value chain encompassing top 75% by value for upstream and downstream, right? Reporting may be upstream and downstream or can be or on aggregated basis. So they are saying you may choose to report upstream BRSR core separately. You may choose to report downstream BRSR separately, or may choose to report both together as a value chain. Reporting format, as I said, it should be on the base on the BRSR core, and it should be become a part of annual report reporting along with the BRSR and BRSR core. Limited assurance, yes. As I said, there is reasonable assurance for 150 companies for BRSR core for their BRSR reporting, but there is a limited assurance for the value chain reporting on BRSR core for 250 companies from FY 25-26, not for 24-25. So there's a difference between reasonable assurance and limited assurance. The reasonable assurance, the scope is more deep. The limited assurance is limited to the limited scope as defined with the assurance provider. So there will be limited assurance also will be required for the value chain disclosure by the entities from FY 25-26 for the top 250 listed companies. Moving on. So the one of the first step, one of the very basic first step for value chain disclosure, and with my discussion with my folks in the industry, the first step is how what will fall under upstream, what will fall under downstream, and how shall we go ahead with the process. So we have kind of created a small framework for doing this, which we call ICSECR, in which the first step is identifying your value chain for a particular year, for last year, what we have reported, categorizing them upstream and downstream, selecting and shortlisting the top 75% value, engaging and communicating with your partners about the requirements, about the intricacies, about the data deep requirements, collecting the data and verifying and consolidating data, and then finally reporting. But before get taking this approach, the very first thing required with the entities here is the alignment for the principles, harmonized principle and policies on the basis of which this categorization of upstream and downstream may happen. As I said, what your upstream and downstream encompasses. So upstream, as I said, supply chain, and who are the supply chain partners? Your raw material suppliers, your service suppliers, your contract manufacturers, your job workers, your capital goods supplier, your supply side logistics team, your upstream leased as a supplier. All of those falls under your supply chain, and many more. I'm sure there will be a lot of different kind of business modalities, imports, a lot of questions you will be having around it. But yes, that is why, as rightly said by Ipsita, please share your queries. We will consolidate those things and will reach out to SEBI for getting a clarification on those. So that is why we have invited all of you to that, so that we can help you doing this. And for downstream, your customers, your friend, if there's a franchise partners, your downstream transporters, a distributor, logistics provider, or downstream leased as, and many more. So this is what as brief illustrative thing for the ESG value chain partners. We have created a assurance ready checklist for the companies entities to prepare them for the assurance, for final assurance from the reasonable assurance as well. And we have preparing and working on creating this value chain partners disclosures as well. And as rightly said by Mr. Jangu, is that technology is something is going to help us in this very specific requirement and deep detailed requirement. So we will be doing that together for simplifying the ESG compliances, BRSR compliances. So we'll again come back in the Q&A sessions. Thank you for patiently hearing me out, and I hope I would have been able to add certain value with you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Abhishek, for enriching all of us with the latest insights. Now I'm inviting Ms. Swati Chaurasia to empower us with an overview of the BRSR format, with the latest developments.
Yeah. Thank you, Psita. So, hi everyone. So this is how the new BRSR format looks like. It has got three sections. Section A, which mostly talks about the general information about the company. Section B has two topics. One is on the policy and management process, and second is on the leadership accountability. Section C includes 9 principles based on the NGRBC guidelines, which is further subdivided into 68 essential indicators, which are mandatory in nature, and 39 leadership indicators, which are voluntary in nature. Leadership indicators mostly talks on disclosures of LCA assessment conducted, conflict management policy done. Essential indicators on the other side talks about the data on the number of awareness program conducted, environmental data including energy, emissions, wastewater, etc. Now, in terms of the reporting format and structure, as already mentioned, it has got some subjective questions which talks about disclosing how are you ensuring health and safety of employees, sustainable sourcing processes taken care, tabular questions which is involving rigorous calculations, emission questions, and policy related questions. So this is a brief about new BRSR format. Moving ahead. Now, in terms of the additions or modifications made to the new BRSR, in section A, we have two additions, which talks about one is you need to mention the name of the assurance provider and the type of assurance taken. Section B remains same. The major additions are made in section C with respect to each principle. As I already mentioned, there are 68 essential indicators and 39 leadership indicators. On total, 11 amendments have been made or additions have been made. With respect to Principle 1, there are two additions. With Principle 3, one. Principle 5, we have two additions. The major four additions are made in Principle 6, which involves environment part. Principle 8 and 9 have 1 additions, respectively. So as you can see, there are about 145 indicators where an entity has to make the disclosure. And as the SEBI and the scenarios are progressing forward, we may even touch 150 plus indicators as well in near future. Moving ahead. Now, what kind of revisions have been made? So as you can see, there are certain new requirements which have been added, and there are certain mandatory requirements which have been added, which were earlier voluntary in nature. So in Principle 1, we have two new requirements with respect to openness of business and engagement with customers, on regard to number of accounts payable, the share of purchases and sales done in the value chain, including trading houses, dealers, and other related parties. Principle 3 includes one new requirement on the amount of spent on the programs for taking care of the well-being of employees and workers. Principle 5 has two new requirements. One is on the gross wage paid to the females as percentage of total amount and the number of complaints filed under sexual harassment case. There are four additions made in Principle 6. Two are new requirements and two are mandatory. It is particularly on the energy, water, GHG emissions consumption. And it has also been asked that you make an adjustment with respect to the purchasing power parity so that the global comparison could be made easy. Principle 8 talks mostly about the employment opportunities created in the rural areas and the wages provided to them. Last but not the least, on the consumer engagement part, what are the data breaches information has to be clarified over here. So this is about me, and I'll again join you in the Q&A section. Over to you, Ipsita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swati, for taking us through. Now I invite Aditya to take us, who is the product lead at GovEva, to give us a sneak peek of the portal.
Thank you, Ipsita. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for your time today. And I'll be taking you to the tech solution that we have been talking about. So there are various challenges that we have when it comes to BRSR. So, so what is the solution that we are offering here? So let me come to that. So this is the GovEva platform, and this is something that will enable companies to have a tech tech solution for their BRSR. So let me take you directly towards the BRSR execute. So as you see here, all the sections of BRSR have been digitized. If you see section A, general disclosures, B, management, and C, the 9 principles of NGRBC have been digitized. Now we have discussed the format of SEBI for the BRSR. The format is quite complex. If you see, there are textual format questions, there are tabular format questions. So the format asks for multiple ratios, percentages, and since we are working with since top 1,000 companies have been assigned this task to complete the BRSR, this task becomes a major challenge for them. That is the data aggregation. So to tackle that problem, what we have done is we have simplified the input screen for each and every individual. So if you see here, we have just asked for basic details and the system will do the calculations on its own. So centrally, let's say a person is assigned as an admin. So centrally from the main office, a person could be assigned. He will be assigning tasks to individual entities of the company. It could be various departments or various locations. So they will be assigned tasks, they will enter their inputs, and centrally the admin can view their answers and the system will automatically sum their answers here. And of course, here we have multiple ways of verifying the inputs that we have got from individual users. So first thing is multiple levels of makers and checkers. So here you can see there is a data input provider. The data that has been inputted by the provider is reviewed by this person and approved by this person. So we could have a multiple level of maker checkers that will verify the data and ensure that it's correct and the data integrity is maintained. Other than that, we can also upload an evidence or an attachment for each and every question here. So that is how the data aggregation takes place. Now, let me take you to the part wherein we have a, let's say, occupational health and safety management kind of question, wherein we will require multiple inputs from multiple locations. And uh, let's say we have got those inputs. So the BRSR just asks for one single entry. So it's our job to now summarize the answers that we have got from various locations. So here we have this feature of aggregating or summarizing all of these answers that we have got from individual stakeholders of the company using an AI feature. So if you can see here, auto answer using GovEva AI. All you have to do is click here and it will create a summary of the answers that have been provided. All you have to do is click copy and the answer is auto populated here. So as you can see, the task becomes very easy and it reduces a lot of time and effort. Other than that, there is one other challenge that company faces when it comes to various types of inputs that the BRSR asks for. So it could be, for example, electricity. It could be in kilowatts or megawatts, but but the BRSR asks for a specific format, and it's important to stick to that. It is in gigajoules or megajoules. And of course, there are scope 1, 2, and 3. So what are those? So here within the system itself, whenever the admin or the people of the company input the data, you can centrally just click here and have a view of all the scopes of emission. And you can immediately copy this and paste it over here. So the entire scope 1, 2, 3 calculations becomes very easy. Now this is something that the data aggregation has happened and all the data has been aggregated in a digitized format. So what after this? The system, all you have to do is click on this BRSR report and the report is generated real time as per the SEBI format exactly. As you can see, the percentage have been automatically calculated and the input was very simple for the company. So all the sections will be exported in a similar format and at the same time you can directly export this to Word. So if you just click here, you will be able to see the Word format, which is exactly as per the SEBI requirement. And after this, let me take you to the another major challenge when it comes to BRSR. So it is the carbon emission calculation. So what should the company report on? What are my scope 1, 2, 3? Everything the platform helps you with. So let's say electricity is one input or one emission that needs to be calculated. Now there are three simple ways wherein the data input can be done. So let's say the first way is, of course, one by one you can enter the data manually, or the second way wherein you can just copy and paste the data. So for example, I have this data set. I'll just copy this, copy, and I'll just paste it here. So as you can see, all the data has been inputted and we can submit it right here. So if you see, my latest entries have been converted to the emission factor according to the emission factor that has been recognized by SEBI as well as global standards, and the output is generated in the format that is required by the SEBI. This becomes very easy. And the third way, of course, is to aggregate the APIs. So every company has an ERP at their end. So the GovEva platform can link with the internal ERP, and it can automatically fetch data from that, and it can produce the results accordingly. So you see, in the similar manner, we can then move on to have other emissions like solid fuels or liquid fuels, whatever commute the employees have, air travel, road freight, ocean freight for import and export. In fact, refrigerant, everything can be calculated within the platform itself. Other than that, once all of this is calculated, we have the we have the facility to visualize everything. So what is the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions? What are the various sources that are emitting? Who are the major contributors of emissions? Everything can be tracked here on the platform. This was the emission part. And of course, there are other parts like social and gender ESG calculators, like we have gender diversity, male female ratio for employee, workers, board of directors, etc. And also the waste type that we was talking about. So 8 different types of waste and post waste generation activities, everything can be tracked within the platform itself. And of course, the intensity and the water and waste withdrawal. So in this manner, the platform, the technology that we are stressing upon, it helps you aggregate data from multiple locations, from multiple sources, and in the format that is required by the SEBI. It helps you visualize everything, the data assurance, the data trails, everything is taken care within the platform. We can have an accountability of who is providing the inputs, who is giving the inputs at what time. We can send them reminders through the platform itself. Is the question answered, not answered? Everything can be tracked within the platform. So the tech solution actually helps you with an overall bird's eye view of what is happening. It also gives you a trail of audit, as in what is happening, who is giving what input at what time. Everything can be taken care within the platform itself. So with uh, with that, I conclude my end of conversation, and I'll see you in Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya, for taking us through the portal. It's really empowering to learn about the portal and how it has made the life really easy for all of us to report. Now, I would like you
Thank you.
to introduce A to G and how we do help in the services. So, A2G or AA Garg and Co. Is a management consulting firm practicing in the domains of EPR, that is Extended Producers Responsibility, ESG, that is Environmental Social Governance, Corporate Finance and Business Operations, and we do provide the tech-enabled solutions. So we have an in-depth, deep domain expertise of 50 plus years and have worked with the Fortune 500 companies across the sectors in India and emerging markets. We have a good multidisciplinary professional team of sustainability experts, chartered accountants, lawyers, engineers, MBAs who are armed with the experience which enables us to provide last mile solution to all our clients. We introduce our team to you, comprising of Mr. Abhishek Garg, Mr. Vikash Garg, the leaders, followed by Mr. Hussein Parpia, Ms. Swati Chaurasia, Mr. Sujain Jain, and myself. Thank you so much, everyone. In the spirit of the shared knowledge and growth, I extend my deepest gratitude to our distinguished speakers, partners, and the entire audience. Your collective energy and engagement have made this webinar a resounding success. Remember, the journey of knowledge knows no end. Until we meet again, I thank you for your time, attention, and valuable contributions. Thank you so much, everyone, for your precious time.